My name is Serafina. I'm 28 years old, and 3 years ago I thought I was planning the perfect wedding. What I didn't know was that my parents had already made their choice, and it wasn't me. The day that should have been the happiest of my life became the moment I discovered just how little I meant to my own family. But here's the thing about betrayal. It has a way of revealing who people really are, and sometimes the revenge that follows is so perfectly orchestrated that even you can't believe how satisfying it feels when karma finally comes. Full circle. Before we dive into this wild journey of family drama and the sweetest revenge you've ever heard, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? If this story hits close to home or you're ready for some serious family karma, smash that like button and subscribe, because trust me, you're going to want to hear how this unfolds. This isn't just about a wedding, it's about discovering that sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family that truly has your back. Growing up as the eldest daughter in the Morrison family, I always believed I was the responsible one, the achiever, the daughter my parents could count on. My younger sister Celeste, 3 years my junior, had always been what you'd call the baby of the family, the one who could do no wrong, whose mistakes were always forgiven, with a gentle smile and a "she'll learn eventually." I graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern with a degree in marketing, landed a job at a prestigious Chicago firm right out of college, and worked my way up to senior account manager by age 26. I bought my own condo, contributed to my 401k, and even helped my parents financially when Dad's construction business hit a rough patch during the 2020 pandemic. I was everything a parent should be proud of: stable, successful, and fiercely independent. Celeste, on the other hand, took the scenic route through life. She changed majors 4 times, took 2 gap years to find herself in Europe, funded by mom and dad, of course, and finally settled on art therapy at a small liberal arts college in Vermont. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't bitter about our different paths. I genuinely wanted my sister to succeed and find her passion. What I didn't realize was how differently our parents viewed our respective journeys. When I got engaged to Marcus, my boyfriend of 4 years, in the spring of 2021, I was over the moon. Marcus was everything I could have asked for: kind, ambitious, funny, and he loved me for exactly who I was. He was a software engineer at a startup that had just secured major funding, and together we felt unstoppable. Our relationship had weathered the pandemic, long work hours, and all the usual stresses that test couples in their 20s. The proposal was perfect. He took me back to the little cafe where we had our first date, and right there between the table where we'd nervously sipped lattes 4 years earlier, he got down on one knee with his grandmother's ring. I said yes before he could even finish asking the question. Planning our wedding became my favorite obsession. I spent months researching venues, tasting cakes, and scrolling through Pinterest boards at 2 a.m. We chose June 15th, 2022 for our date, a beautiful Saturday in what would hopefully be perfect early summer weather. The venue was a restored barn about an hour outside Chicago, with sprawling gardens and a view of a small lake. It was rustic but elegant, exactly what Marcus and I had dreamed of. My parents seemed excited about the wedding plans. Mom came dress shopping with me and actually cried when I found the one, a flowing A-line with delicate lace sleeves that made me feel like a princess. Dad walked through the venue with us and nodded approvingly at Marcus's choice of groomsmen. They seemed genuinely happy for us and invested in making our day special. But as spring turned into early summer, something shifted. Phone calls from my parents became shorter, less enthusiastic. When I'd excitedly tell them about the final menu choices or the string quartet we'd booked, their responses felt forced, distracted. I chalked it up to wedding stress. Maybe they were feeling the financial pressure, even though Marcus and I were paying for most of it ourselves. Then, exactly 3 weeks before our wedding, the call came that changed everything. It was Mom, and her voice had that careful, measured tone she used when she was about to deliver bad news. Serafina, honey, we need to talk. Your father and I have been thinking, Mom, continued her voice, taking on that apologetic but firm tone I remembered from childhood when she was about to tell me something I wouldn't want to hear. Celeste's graduation is the same weekend as your wedding. I felt my stomach drop. What do you mean the same weekend? My wedding is June 15th. We've had this date locked in for 8 months. Well, Celeste just found out that her college moved the graduation ceremony. Apparently, there was some issue with the original venue and now it's Saturday, June 15th at 2 p.m., the same day. The exact same day as my 4 p.m. ceremony. Mom, that's unfortunate timing, but surely Celeste can skip her graduation ceremony. I mean, she'll still get her diploma. The wedding only happens once. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When my mother spoke again, her voice was steady but defensive. This is Celeste's moment. She's worked so hard to get through college, especially after all the struggles she's had. This graduation represents so much more than just a degree. It's proof that she can finish what she starts. And my wedding doesn't represent anything important. I could hear my voice rising, but I couldn't stop it. Mom, I'm getting married. This is supposed to be the most important day of my life. Of course it's important, sweetheart. But you're already successful, already established. You'll have many wonderful moments in your life. For Celeste, this might be her defining achievement. I sat down heavily on my couch, the phone trembling in my hand. Are you saying you're not coming to my wedding? Another pause. This one longer. Your father and I talked about it extensively. We think it would be best if we attend Celeste's graduation. It's in Vermont, and with travel time we just couldn't make it to both. We're so sorry, honey, but we hope you understand. I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. My parents were choosing my sister's graduation ceremony, something that happens for thousands of students every year, over my wedding. My once-in-a-lifetime wedding. What about walking me down the aisle? I whispered. Dad's supposed to walk me down the aisle. Maybe Marcus's father could do it, or you could walk yourself. You're such an independent woman, Serafina. You don't need us there to validate your choices. Independent. There was that word again. The word that had followed me my whole life, used to justify why I got less attention, less help, less consideration. Because I was independent, I didn't need my parents' presence at my college graduation. Because I was independent, I didn't need help with my first apartment. And now, because I was independent, I didn't need my parents at my wedding. I can't believe this, I said, my voice barely audible. I cannot believe you're doing this to me. Serafina, please don't be dramatic. We're not doing anything to you. We're making a difficult choice between two important events. Someday when you have children, you'll understand. That stung more than anything else she could have said. The implication that I wasn't really their child, not in the way that mattered, not in the way Celeste was. I hung up without saying goodbye. The next few days passed in a blur of shocked phone calls to friends and frantic conversations with Marcus. My bridesmaids were outraged on my behalf. My maid of honor, Jessica, offered to drive to Vermont and personally drag my parents to my wedding. Marcus was supportive, but clearly trying to stay diplomatic. He loved my family and couldn't quite believe they were serious about this. Once they realize how hurt you are, they'll figure out a way to make both events work. But I knew my parents better than that. Once they made a decision, especially one they'd convinced themselves was morally righteous, they stuck to it with stubborn determination. I called Celeste directly, hoping against hope that she might offer to skip her own graduation ceremony. Surely she would understand that a wedding trumped a graduation, wouldn't she? Oh, Sierra, she said, when I explained the situation. I'm so sorry this is happening. But you know I can't miss my graduation. Mom and Dad have been planning this trip for months. They're so proud of me finally finishing college. Finally finishing college. At 25. After 6 years and countless financial contributions from our parents. Celeste, this is my wedding day. Our parents are supposed to be there. Dad is supposed to walk me down the aisle. I know, and I feel terrible about the timing. But honestly, isn't the most important thing that you and Marcus love each other? Do you really need Mom and Dad there to make it official? I realized in that moment that my entire family saw my wedding as optional, as something nice, but not necessary. They saw Celeste's graduation as an achievement that required their presence and support. And me, I was just expected to handle it, to be understanding, to be independent. That night, lying in bed next to Marcus, I made a decision that would change everything. If my family wanted to choose sides, if they wanted to show me exactly where I stood in their hierarchy of importance, then fine. But they were going to learn that choices have consequences. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity that surprised me. Marcus was already up making coffee in our kitchen, his face creased with worry. He'd been trying so hard to find a solution to smooth things over, but some betrayals can't be smoothed over, they can only be answered. I know what I'm going to do, I announced as I walked into the kitchen. Marcus looked up hopefully. Did your parents call? Are they coming around? No, I said, accepting the mug of coffee he handed me. And they're not going to. But that's okay because I've figured out exactly how to handle this situation. I spent the entire day making phone calls and sending emails. First, I called every single extended family member who had been invited to the wedding: aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends who had known me since childhood. I told them exactly what my parents had decided to do, and let me tell you, the reactions were everything I could have hoped for. My Aunt Linda, my father's sister, was apoplectic. They're missing your wedding for a graduation ceremony. Are they out of their minds? She immediately called my father and gave him what she later described as a piece of her mind that he won't soon forget. My cousin Sarah, who had always been like a sister to me, was equally outraged. I'm going to post about this on Facebook. Everyone needs to know what kind of parents skip their daughter's wedding. Actually, I said, hold off on social media for now. I have a better idea. Because here's the thing about revenge: the best kind isn't hot and immediate. It's cold, calculated, and perfectly timed for maximum impact. I called the photographer I'd hired for the wedding, a talented woman named Maria, who had become almost a friend throughout the planning process. Maria, I need to add something to our package, I said. I want you to document everything, not just the pretty moments, but the real moments. Especially when it comes time for the father-daughter dance and the mother-son dance. I want every emotion captured. Next, I called my videographer with a similar request. I want you to get footage of Marcus's parents walking me down the aisle since my father won't be there. I want you to capture my face when they ask if my parents are here. I want all of it. But the most important call I made was to my Uncle Robert, my mother's brother who lived in Vermont. Uncle Robert had always been the truth teller in our family, the one who called out bullshit when he saw it. He also happened to live just 20 minutes away from Celeste's college. Uncle Robert, I said when he picked up, I need a favor. After I explained the situation, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight with anger. They're doing what now? You heard me right. They're choosing Celeste's graduation over my wedding. That's the most selfish, short-sighted thing I've ever heard. And I'm going to tell them exactly that. Actually, I was hoping you could do something else for me. I outlined my plan to Uncle Robert, and by the end of the conversation he was chuckling despite his anger. Serafina, you are your grandmother's granddaughter. She would be so proud of this level of strategic thinking. The next part of my plan involved some careful social media management. I created a private Facebook group called Serafina's Wedding Support Squad and invited everyone who was coming to the wedding, all the family members, friends, and colleagues who had been looking forward to celebrating with us. In the group, I posted a heartfelt message explaining the situation. As many of you know by now, my parents have decided not to attend my wedding because it conflicts with my sister's college graduation. I want you all to know that Marcus and I are still incredibly excited to celebrate with all of you, and we're not going to let this dampen our joy. However, I do want to document this moment in our family's history because I think it says something important about the choices we make and the messages we send to the people we love. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Person after person commented with support, outrage on my behalf, and promises to make my wedding day even more special to make up for my parents' absence. My grandmother, who was 89 and sharp as a tack, commented, "Some people don't deserve the children they're given. You're going to have a beautiful wedding, sweetheart, and someday your parents will realize what they missed. But here's where my plan gets really interesting. Because I wasn't just planning to document my parents' absence from my wedding, I was planning to make sure they understood exactly what they had chosen instead. You see, revenge isn't just about making someone pay for what they've done to you. Sometimes it's about making them see themselves clearly for the first time. And I was about to give my parents the clearest view of themselves they'd ever had. The beauty of my plan was its simplicity. I wasn't going to scream or shout or cause a scene. I was simply going to let their choice speak for itself and then make sure everyone, and I mean everyone, could see exactly what that choice looked like in practice. Because when you choose to miss your daughter's wedding for a graduation ceremony, you don't just miss a party. You miss walking her down the aisle. You miss the father-daughter dance. You miss the moment when she throws her bouquet. You miss the speeches where people talk about how proud her parents must be. You miss all of it. And I was going to make sure they knew exactly what they missed in vivid, undeniable detail. But first I had a wedding to finalize because no matter what, my parents had decided I was going to marry the love of my life and it was going to be absolutely perfect. June 15th, 2022, dawned absolutely perfect, the kind of day that makes you believe in fairy tales and happy endings. The sky was a brilliant blue with just a few wispy clouds, and the temperature was that ideal 75 degrees that makes everything feel possible. As I sat in the bridal suite at our venue, surrounded by my bridesmaids who were fluttering around with final touch-ups and mimosas, I felt a strange sense of peace. My phone had been buzzing all morning with messages of love and support. Friends, family members, and even some people I barely knew had been sending encouraging texts. The Wedding Support Squad Facebook group had grown to over 200 members overnight, with people sharing their own stories of family disappointment and triumph. But the most meaningful moment came when Marcus's parents, Helen and David, knocked on the bridal suite door around noon. "Serafina, honey," Helen said, her eyes already misty, "we wanted to talk to you before the ceremony." Helen was everything my mother wasn't: warm without being overwhelming, supportive without being controlling, and present without being intrusive. She had welcomed me into their family from day one, treating me like the daughter she'd never had. "David and I have been talking," she continued, "and we want you to know that we consider ourselves incredibly lucky to be gaining you as a daughter. We also want you to know that if you'd like, David would be honored to walk you down the aisle." David, a quiet man who worked as a high school principal and had the kind of steady presence that made everyone feel safe, nodded earnestly. "It would be my privilege, Serafina. No young woman should have to walk down that aisle alone on her wedding day." I started crying then, right there in my perfectly applied makeup, because sometimes kindness from unexpected places hits you harder than cruelty from the people who are supposed to love you most. "I would love that," I whispered. and Helen immediately started dabbing at my eyes with a tissue, muttering about waterproof mascara. Meanwhile, my photographer Maria was documenting everything. Not just the pretty moments, though there were plenty of those, but the real emotions. She captured the moment when my bridesmaids realized my parents really weren't coming. She captured my face when I read a text from my aunt saying my parents had posted photos from Celeste's graduation ceremony on Facebook. She captured the quiet moment when Marcus's father practiced walking me down the aisle during our brief rehearsal. At 3:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the ceremony was set to begin, I got a text from my mother. Having a wonderful time at Celeste's graduation. Thinking of you today. Send pictures. The exclamation points felt like little daggers. But then the music started and everything else faded away. My bridesmaids walked down the aisle in their flowing sage green dresses, looking absolutely radiant. Marcus stood at the altar in his navy suit, his face lighting up the moment he saw me at the back of the aisle. And then it was my turn. David offered me his arm with such gentle dignity that I almost started crying again. "Ready?" he asked quietly. "Ready." Walking down that aisle on the arm of my soon-to-be father-in-law, seeing Marcus's face transform with joy and love, watching our friends and family rise to their feet with smiles and happy tears. It was everything I had dreamed it would be. For those few minutes, I forgot all about the empty seats in the front row where my parents should have been sitting. The ceremony itself was perfect. We had written our own vows, and when Marcus promised to choose me every single day, no matter what other options present themselves, I knew he understood exactly what this day meant to me. When I promised to build a family with you based on love, support, and showing up for each other, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. But the moment that really got to me was when the officiant asked the traditional question, "Who gives this woman to be married to this man?" David stepped forward and said in his clear, strong voice, "Her chosen family does." The applause was thunderous. The reception was everything. A wedding reception should be joyful, chaotic, full of laughter and dancing, and slightly drunk relatives giving heartfelt toasts. Marcus's father gave a speech about how proud he was to welcome me into their family officially, though he said I'd been family in his heart for years. My maid of honor, Jessica, gave a speech about chosen family and the people who show up when it matters most. But the most powerful moment came during what should have been the father-daughter dance. Instead of skipping it, I had planned something special. The DJ announced that I would be dancing with all the father figures who helped raise me, and suddenly the dance floor was filled with the men who had been there for me throughout my life. My grandfather, my uncles, my high school basketball coach who had been like a father to me, Marcus's father, and even my elderly next-door neighbor who had always been there with a listening ear and good advice. As we swayed to My Girl by the Temptations, the song my dad was supposed to dance with me to, Maria captured every moment. The joy on the faces of these amazing men who had stepped up when my actual father stepped out. The tears of the guests who understood the significance of what they were witnessing. And yes, my own face radiant with the love of my chosen family. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Because throughout the entire day, I was getting updates from Uncle Robert in Vermont. He had attended Celeste's graduation ceremony, and he had been taking plenty of photos and videos of his own. He sent me pictures of my parents beaming proudly as Celeste walked across the stage in her cap and gown. He sent me a video of my father cheering when her name was called. He captured the family dinner afterward where my parents posted extensively on social media about their baby girl finally graduating college. What they didn't post about, what they didn't seem to even think about, was the fact that their other daughter was getting married 300 miles away at the exact same time. The contrast was striking, and Uncle Robert was documenting all of it. As the evening wound down and Marcus and I prepared for our grand exit through a tunnel of sparklers, I felt genuinely happy. Yes, my parents had hurt me deeper than I thought possible. Yes, their absence had left a hole in what should have been a perfect day. But I had also learned something invaluable. I was surrounded by people who truly loved me, who showed up when it mattered, who celebrated my joy as their own. My revenge wasn't about hurting my parents. It was about showing them, and everyone else, exactly what their choice looked like in practice. And thanks to the magic of social media and some very strategic documentation, that lesson was about to reach a much wider audience than they could have imagined. The day after my wedding, as Marcus and I were lounging in bed, still giddy from the most perfect day of our lives, I began phase 2 of my plan. I started by posting a carefully curated album on Facebook titled Our Perfect Wedding Day, Surrounded by Love. The photos told a story. There was me getting ready with my bridesmaids, all of us laughing and crying happy tears. There was the moment Marcus's father offered to walk me down the aisle, captured with perfect emotional timing by Maria. There were the gorgeous ceremony shots, the joyful reception photos, and that incredible image of me dancing with all my father figures during what should have been the father-daughter dance. But the most powerful photo was one Maria had taken during the ceremony. It showed the front 2 rows of seats, one side filled with Marcus's beaming parents, grandparents, and siblings, and the other side where my parents should have been sitting, occupied instead by my grandmother, aunts, and uncles. The empty seats weren't obvious unless you knew to look for them, but once you saw them, you couldn't unsee them. I captioned the album, "Yesterday, I married my best friend, surrounded by the most amazing chosen family a girl could ask for." To everyone who showed up, who celebrated with us, who danced until midnight and made this the most magical day of our lives, thank you. Special thanks to my new father-in-law, David, for walking me down the aisle and making sure I felt loved and supported every step of the way. This is what family looks like. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, the post had dozens of comments from wedding guests and extended family members. People were sharing their own photos from the wedding, tagging friends, and commenting on how beautiful everything looked. But more importantly, people were noticing what wasn't there. My cousin Sarah was the first to comment, "Beautiful wedding, Sarah." Though I noticed some people missed out on this incredible celebration. Their loss. My Aunt Linda was more direct. "This is what happens when parents make the wrong choice. Serafina, you looked absolutely radiant, and everyone who was supposed to be there to celebrate you was there in spirit." Then my grandmother, bless her heart, commented, "I've been to a lot of weddings in my 89 years, and I've never seen a bride more surrounded by love." Some people don't know a good thing when they have it. As the day went on, the comments got more pointed. Family friends who had known me since childhood were expressing shock and disappointment that my parents had missed my wedding. People were sharing the post to their own timelines with comments like, "Can you believe this happened? And what kind of parents skipped their daughter's wedding?" Meanwhile, Uncle Robert was sending me updates from Vermont. Apparently, my parents had spent the day after Celeste's graduation posting their own photo album on Facebook, dozens of pictures of Celeste in her cap and gown, the family dinner celebration, proud parent shots with their college graduate. But people were starting to comment on those posts too. Comments like, "Wasn't this the same day as Serafina's wedding? And hope you got some good photos of the wedding too." My parents were starting to realize that their choice hadn't happened in a vacuum. Word was spreading through our extended family and social circle, and people were taking sides. And it wasn't going well for them. The breaking point came 3 days after my wedding, when my phone rang at 7 a.m. It was my mother, and she sounded frantic. "Serafina, we need to talk. People are saying horrible things about us on Facebook. Your Aunt Linda called your father a disgrace to the family name. Your grandmother told everyone at church that we missed your wedding for a graduation ceremony. This is getting out of hand. What's getting out of hand, Mom? I asked calmly. People finding out what you did. We didn't do anything wrong. We made a difficult choice between two important events. Did you? I asked. Because, from where I'm sitting, it looks like you made a pretty clear statement about which daughter matters more to you. That's not fair, and you know it. We love you both equally. Really, because I have to ask, when was the last time you missed one of Celeste's important events to attend something of mine? Silence. Mom, I graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern. Did you miss any of Celeste's events to attend my graduation? That's different. When I bought my first condo, I invited you and Dad to a housewarming party to celebrate. Did you come? We were busy with Celeste's art show. When I got my promotion to senior account manager, I wanted to take you and Dad to dinner to celebrate. What did you say, Serafina? This isn't helpful. You said you couldn't because it was Celeste's birthday weekend and you were driving up to Vermont to surprise her. Even though her actual birthday was on a Tuesday, and I was asking about Saturday. I could hear my mother crying on the other end of the line. Mom, here's what I want you to understand. This isn't about one day. This is about a pattern that's been going on for years. Celeste's achievements are celebrated, supported, prioritized. Mine are expected, overlooked, or treated as less important because I'm independent and don't need the support. We're proud of you, are you, because you've never shown it. Not in any way that matters. The call ended with both of us crying, but I felt something I hadn't felt in years: clarity. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about truth. And sometimes the truth hurts before it heals. Over the next few weeks, the family fallout continued. My parents found themselves increasingly isolated as more and more family members learned about their choice and expressed their disapproval. Invitations to family gatherings stopped coming. Phone calls from relatives became lectures about priorities and parenting. Celeste, to her credit, finally seemed to understand the magnitude of what had happened. She called me 2 weeks after my wedding, sobbing. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I mean, I knew they weren't coming to your wedding, but I didn't really think about what that meant. Everyone here is talking about it and I feel terrible. Celeste, this isn't your fault, I told her honestly. You didn't ask them to choose. They made that choice all on their own. But I could have told them to go to your wedding instead. I could have said my graduation didn't matter as much. The fact that you didn't even think to offer tells me everything I need to know about how our family works, I said gently. And that's not your fault either, it's just the truth. But the real reckoning was still coming, because my carefully documented wedding day was about to reach an audience much bigger than just our family and friends. The viral moment came exactly 3 weeks after my wedding, and it started with the most innocent of intentions. My friend Jessica, who had been my maid of honor, worked for a lifestyle blog called Real Life Wedding Stories and asked if she could feature our wedding as an example of chosen family celebrations. I want to write about how you handled your parents not being there, she said. I think it could help other people who are dealing with family drama around their weddings. I agreed, thinking it might help a few people in similar situations. Jessica wrote a beautiful piece about our wedding day, focusing on the love and support we received from our chosen family, the creative way we handled the father-daughter dance, and how Marcus's father stepped in to walk me down the aisle. But then she included the backstory about why my parents weren't there, and that's when everything exploded. The article was shared on Reddit first in the wedding shaming community with the title, "Parents Skip Daughter's Wedding for Other Daughter's College Graduation. The Photos Will Break Your Heart." Within hours, it had thousands of upvotes and hundreds of comments from people sharing their own stories of family favoritism and wedding day betrayals. Then it jumped to Twitter where someone shared the photo of me dancing with all my father figures with the caption, "This is what chosen family looks like when your real family chooses wrong." That tweet got 5,000,000 retweets in 2 days, but the real viral moment came when someone created a TikTok comparing my parents' Facebook posts from Celeste's graduation day with my wedding photos. The side-by-side images were devastating, my parents beaming proudly at Celeste's graduation, while I walked down the aisle with my father-in-law, them celebrating at the graduation dinner while I danced with my chosen family. The TikTok got 2.3 million views. Suddenly my story was everywhere. Lifestyle magazines were picking it up, morning shows were discussing it, and relationship experts were weighing in on family dynamics and favoritism. The consensus was overwhelmingly supportive of me and critical of my parents' choice. But more than that, my story had sparked a broader conversation about family expectations, unconditional love, and what it really means to show up for the people you claim to care about. Comments poured in from thousands of people sharing their own stories. My parents missed my college graduation for my brother's Little League championship. I'm 35 and I still remember how that felt. This is exactly how my family works. My sister can do no wrong and I'm expected to just handle everything on my own. Those photos of her dancing with her chosen family made me cry. That's what real love looks like. My parents, meanwhile, were getting a very different kind of attention. People had tracked down their Facebook profiles and were leaving less than kind comments about their parenting choices. My mother had to make her profile private after someone shared screenshots of her graduation day posts with the caption, "These are the parents who skipped their daughter's wedding for this." The phone calls from my family started coming in fast and furious. My parents were panicking about the negative attention. Celeste was mortified that her graduation had become the symbol of favoritism, and various aunts and uncles were either supportive of the public shaming or horrified by the family drama going viral. But the call that mattered most came from my father, exactly 1 month after my wedding day. "Serafina," he said, his voice broken in a way I'd never heard before. "I need to apologize to you." I waited. "I've been reading all these comments, all these stories from other people, and I'm starting to understand what we did to you. Not just missing your wedding, but everything. For years." He was crying now. My stoic, pragmatic father was actually crying. "I don't know how it happened, how we got so focused on helping Celeste that we forgot you needed us too. You were always so capable, so independent that we thought you didn't need us the way she did. Dad, everyone needs their parents to show up for them. Everyone needs to feel like they matter. I know that now. And I know it's probably too late, but I want you to know that we're proud of you. We've always been proud of you. We just did a terrible job of showing it." The conversation lasted 2 hours. My father told me about his own childhood growing up with parents who never celebrated achievements because they were expected. He talked about how he and my mother had fallen into the trap of giving more attention to the child who seemed to need it more, without realizing they were neglecting the child who was quietly succeeding. It didn't excuse what they had done, but it helped me understand it. My mother called the next day with her own tearful apology. Celeste called the day after that, asking if there was any way she could make things right between us. The truth is, forgiveness is a process, not a moment. My parents' absence from my wedding can never be undone. The years of feeling like the less important daughter can't be erased with apologies. But understanding why it happened, seeing them finally recognize the pattern of their behavior, and watching them commit to doing better, that was the beginning of healing. 6 months later, my parents threw Marcus and me a belated wedding reception. They invited everyone who had been at our actual wedding, plus all the extended family who had been following our story. My father walked me into the reception hall, tears streaming down his face, and made a public apology for missing the most important day in our daughter's life. During his speech, he said something that stayed with me. I learned that being proud of your children isn't enough if you don't show them that pride when it matters most. Serafina, you deserved parents who showed up for you, and I'm sorry it took the whole world watching for us to understand that. The reception was beautiful, but more than that, it was healing. Not just for my relationship with my parents, but for our entire family dynamic. Celeste and I grew closer as we both worked to break the patterns that had defined our childhood. My parents made genuine efforts to celebrate my achievements and support my goals. But perhaps most importantly, I learned that sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't about hurting someone back, it's about forcing them to see the truth about themselves so clearly that they have no choice but to change. Today, Marcus and I are happily married, closer than ever to his amazing family, and rebuilding a healthier relationship with mine. We're planning to start a family of our own soon, and when we do, we'll make sure our children know that love isn't about picking favorites, it's about showing up consistently and wholeheartedly for the people who matter most. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? Have you experienced favoritism in your own family or watched someone you love struggle with feeling like they weren't enough? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes sharing these experiences helps us all feel less alone in our struggles. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family drama stories. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that their feelings are valid, that they deserve to be celebrated, and that sometimes the family that shows up matters more than the family you're born into. Thank you for listening to my story, for your support, and for reminding me that we're all just trying to figure out how to love and be loved in return. Life has a funny way of teaching us exactly the lessons we need to learn, even when those lessons come wrapped in heartbreak and disappointment. Remember, you deserve people in your life who choose you, who show up for you, and who celebrate your joy as their own. Never settle for less than that, because you are worth so much more than being someone's second choice. Until next time, keep choosing love, keep choosing yourself, and keep choosing the people who choose you back.